I bought an entire ghost town. Not really, but what if? Did you know there are literally thousands of ghost towns all across the United States, and even more scattered all over the world? Just think about that for a second. Entire towns just sitting there completely empty. Imagine living rent-free with absolutely no noisy neighbors to worry about. Just you and miles of empty streets and silent buildings. Sounds kinda crazy, right? But these places are real, and some of them are absolutely massive, with stories that are even bigger. So, I was thinking, what if we could explore some of these places? Not just the small ones, but the biggest, most expensive, and most mysterious abandoned cities on the entire planet. From billion-dollar ghost cities in China to entire islands that were once the most crowded places on Earth, these locations are insane. We're gonna dive deep into the history of these forgotten places and see what it's really like when an entire city just stops. Get ready, because today we're going on a global tour of the world's most incredible abandoned cities. We're going to find out why they were built, why everyone left, and what secrets they're hiding today. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be looking at your own town a little differently. Strap in, because this is going to be one of the wildest explorations we've ever done. Let's go. Alright, first up, we're heading to China to a place that will absolutely blow your mind. This is Ordos Kangbashi, and it's not your typical old, dusty ghost town. This city is brand new. I'm talking massive, futuristic buildings, huge public squares, incredible stadiums, and sprawling apartment complexes. The government poured over $1 billion into building this place, creating a modern utopia in the middle of the desert. There was just one tiny problem they overlooked when they built it. They built this entire metropolis to house over 1 million people. 1 million. They expected it to be a bustling hub of culture and commerce, a shining example of China's rapid growth. But the people never came. For years, this massive, gleaming city sat almost completely empty. Imagine walking down a 6-lane highway with not a single car in sight, or standing in a massive, beautiful plaza completely by yourself. It's like the set of a post-apocalyptic movie, but it's all real and it's all brand new. The scale of this place is just hard to comprehend. We're talking about hundreds of apartment towers with nobody living in them, office buildings without any workers, and shopping malls with no shoppers. It earned the nickname the world's largest ghost city. It's an eerie monument to ambition, a billion-dollar dream that just didn't pan out the way they planned. The emptiness is deafening. You can walk for miles, and the only sound you'll hear is the wind whistling between these giant vacant structures. In recent years, some people have started to move in, and the population is slowly growing, but it's nowhere near the 1 million it was designed for. It's still a fraction of its intended capacity, so you have these small pockets of life surrounded by a vast, silent emptiness. It's a bizarre mix of a living city and a ghost town, all in one. You might see a family having a picnic in a park designed for thousands, and they're the only ones there. So, why did this happen? It was a classic case of if you build it, they will come not quite working out. High property prices and its remote location made it difficult to attract residents and businesses. Ordos Kangbashi stands as a surreal reminder of what can happen when urban planning goes wrong on a colossal scale. It's a modern ghost city, a futuristic ruin that was abandoned before it was ever truly alive. It's one of the strangest places on Earth. Now, for our next stop, we're going from a city that was never filled to an island that was once the most densely populated place in the entire history of the world. Welcome to Hashima Island, Japan, also known as Battleship Island because, well, look at it. From a distance, it looks exactly like a giant gray warship floating in the sea. This place has a history that is absolutely insane, and its transformation into a ghost island is even crazier. In the late 1800s, coal was discovered beneath the island, and the Mitsubishi Corporation bought it to create a massive undersea coal mining facility. To house all the workers and their families, they just kept building upwards. They crammed apartment buildings, a school, a hospital, shops, and even a movie theater onto this tiny rock. At its peak in the 1950s, over 5,000 people lived here, making it the most densely populated place on the planet. Imagine living your entire life on a concrete island, surrounded by the sea. Life was tough. The workers descended deep into the earth for long, grueling shifts in the coal mines. while their families lived in the cramped apartments above. The whole island was a maze of concrete buildings and narrow stairways, all enclosed by a seawall to protect it from the violent typhoons that would smash against its sides. It was a self-contained concrete fortress, a city at sea, completely cut off from the mainland except for the boats that brought supplies and new workers. But in the 1960s, the world started switching from coal to petroleum. The mine was no longer profitable. So in 1974, Mitsubishi made a shocking announcement. They were closing the mine and shutting down the entire island. Everyone had to leave. Within a matter of weeks, a place that was once overflowing with thousands of people became completely empty. They left everything behind: furniture, televisions, toys, clothes. They just walked away, leaving a city frozen in time. Today, Hashima Island is a crumbling ruin. Decades of typhoons and salty sea air have battered the concrete buildings, leaving them hollowed out and skeletal. You can see through the empty window frames into apartments where families once lived, their belongings still scattered on the floor, covered in dust and decay. It's a powerful and haunting place, a testament to a forgotten era of industry. It's so visually stunning and eerie that it was even used as the villain's lair in the James Bond movie Skyfall. Okay, let's leave the sea behind and travel back in time to the American Wild West. We're going to Bodie, California, one of the most famous and best preserved ghost towns in the United States. This isn't a movie set, this is the real deal. When you walk down the dusty streets of Bodie, you're literally stepping back into the 1880s. The story of this town is a classic tale of gold, greed, and the brutal reality of frontier life. It all started in 1859 when a group of prospectors, including a guy named W.S. Bodie, discovered gold here. The town that sprung up was named after him, and after a major gold strike in the late 1870s, Bodie exploded. Thousands of people flocked here, hoping to strike it rich. The town grew to have a population of nearly 10,000 people, complete with dozens of saloons, a notorious red light district, and a reputation for being one of the wildest and most lawless towns in the West. Life in Bodie was not for the faint of heart. The town is located high in the mountains at over 8,000 feet. The winters were absolutely brutal, with heavy snow and freezing temperatures that could last for months, cutting the town off from the outside world. On top of that, it was a dangerous place. Gunfights, robberies, and bar brawls were supposedly a daily occurrence. The saying went, "Goodbye God, I'm going to Bodie." It was a place where fortunes were made and lives were lost in the blink of an eye. But like all booms, this one eventually went bust. The gold started to run out and the mines became less profitable. People began to leave, seeking their fortunes elsewhere. A massive fire in 1932 destroyed a huge part of the town, which was the final nail in the coffin. By the 1940s, Bodie was a true ghost town, with only a handful of caretakers remaining. The dry climate and remote location helped preserve what was left. Today, Bodie is a state historic park, kept in a state of arrested decay. This means nothing is restored, but it's not allowed to fall apart either. The buildings are still filled with the original furniture, goods are still on the shelves in the general store, and tables are set for dinner in the houses. It's like the residents just vanished one day. Walking through Bodie is one of the most authentic Old West experiences you can have, a chilling and fascinating glimpse into a rough and tumble past. For this next one, we're going way off the grid. I'm talking about the high Arctic, to a place that honestly shouldn't even exist. This is Pyramiden, a former Soviet coal mining settlement on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard. It's one of the northernmost towns on Earth, and it's a perfectly preserved slice of the Soviet Union, just abandoned in the middle of a frozen wasteland. This place is seriously one of the most surreal locations on the planet. Pyramiden was actually founded by Sweden in 1910 but was sold to the Soviet Union in 1927. For decades, it was a model Soviet town, a communist utopia built to showcase the power and success of the USSR. They had everything here. A beautiful cultural palace with a theater, a library with over 50,000 books, a sports complex with a heated indoor swimming pool and comfortable housing for over 1,000 residents. All of this was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by glaciers and polar bears. The town was named after the pyramid-shaped mountain that looms over it, and its main purpose was to mine the rich coal deposits in the area. For the Soviet citizens who lived here, it was honestly a privilege. They had better pay, better food, and better living conditions than most people back in the USSR. It was an idealistic community, a symbol of Soviet pride shining brightly in the remote, capitalist-leaning West. They even had the world's northernmost grand piano and the northernmost monument to Vladimir Lenin. But the dream came to an abrupt end. In the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the mine became unprofitable. Russia, struggling with its own economic crisis, could no longer afford to subsidize this remote Arctic outpost. In 1998, the decision was made to shut it all down. The residents were given just a few hours to pack their bags and leave on the last ship before the winter ice set in. They left almost everything behind. Because of the freezing Arctic climate, everything has been perfectly preserved. It's honestly like stepping into a time capsule. You can walk into the school and see children's drawings still on the walls. The film reels are still in the cinema's projection booth. The sheet music is still on the grand piano in the concert hall. It's a ghost town, but it doesn't feel ancient. It feels like the people just stepped out for a moment and will be back any second. It's a hauntingly beautiful and deeply strange monument to a fallen empire. From the frozen north, we're now traveling to the lush, subtropical mountains of Georgia, the country, not the state. Here, hidden in a deep forested gorge, is the ghost town of Akarmara. This place honestly looks like it's straight out of The Last of Us. The buildings are not just abandoned, they are being actively reclaimed by nature. Trees are growing through balconies, vines are crawling up the walls, and a thick layer of moss covers almost everything. Akarmara and the larger town of Tgvarcheli it's a part of, was once a prosperous Soviet coal mining center. During its heyday, thousands of people lived here. The Soviets built these grand, imposing Stalinist-era apartment buildings, a hospital and schools. The architecture is surprisingly ornate for a mining town, with decorative columns and elegant arches. It was designed to be another showcase of Soviet prosperity, a thriving community built on the wealth pulled from the surrounding mountains. The decline began in the 1980s as the coal mines started to become less productive. But what truly sealed Akarmara's fate was the collapse of the Soviet Union and the brutal war in Abkhazia in the early 1990s. The region became a war zone. Tgvarcheli and Akarmara were under siege for over a year, cut off from food and supplies. The residents endured starvation and constant shelling. It was a horrific time that shattered the community. After the war, the mines were permanently closed, and the economy collapsed. With no jobs and their homes destroyed or damaged, most of the population had no choice but to leave. They fled, abandoning their apartments and leaving the town to the elements. Akarmara, being the most remote part of the city, emptied out almost completely. Only a handful of families remain today, living like ghosts among the ruins of a once thriving town, surrounded by the encroaching forest. Exploring Akarmara today is a surreal and somber experience. You can wander through these massive empty apartment blocks, their grand facades now crumbling and covered in green. You can see the remnants of people's lives, a rusty bed frame, a piece of old wallpaper, a broken bathtub, all being slowly consumed by the forest. It's a powerful symbol of how quickly civilization can be erased by war and neglect, and how relentlessly nature will always return to reclaim its territory. Okay, if you thought Akarmara was being reclaimed by nature, wait until you see this next place. We're going back to China, but this time to an island off the coast near Shanghai. This is Hutuan, and it's known as the Green Village. And when I say green, I mean it is completely and utterly consumed by lush green ivy and vegetation. It is honestly one of the most stunningly beautiful ghost towns you will ever see. It looks like a fantasy world come to life. Hutuan was once a thriving fishing village, home to more than 2,000 residents. For generations, life here revolved around the sea. The fishermen would go out in their boats and the community would prosper from their catches. The village was built on the steep hillsides of the island, with stone houses packed closely together, connected by narrow, winding stone paths. From the sea, it would have been a bustling sight, full of life and activity. But in the early 1990s, things began to change. The small bay could no longer accommodate the larger fishing boats that were becoming common, and getting supplies to the remote island was becoming a problem. More importantly, the younger generation wanted better opportunities for education and jobs, which were only available on the mainland. So, one by one, the families started to pack up and move away, leaving their stone houses behind. By 2002, the village was almost completely deserted, and that's when nature took over. With no one to trim the vegetation or maintain the paths, the island's lush subtropical plants began to creep in. A thick blanket of ivy and climbing vines started to cover everything. It crawled over the roofs, through the windows, and down the walls of every single house. The once clear stone paths disappeared under a carpet of green. The entire village was slowly, beautifully swallowed by the forest. For years, Hutawan was a forgotten secret, known only to a few. But then, a few years ago, a photographer stumbled upon it and shared pictures online. The images of this magical green village went viral, and suddenly, the world became fascinated by it. Now Hutawan has become an unlikely tourist attraction. A viewing platform has been built on a nearby hill, and tourists can pay to walk some of the cleared paths to see this incredible spectacle of nature reclaiming a man-made world. It's a ghost town reborn as a natural wonder. We've seen cities reclaimed by forests and ivy, but now we're heading to a place where the city is literally being eaten by sand. This is Kolmanskop, in the middle of the Namib Desert, in Namibia. This ghost town is one of the most visually stunning and bizarre places I've ever seen. Imagine walking into beautiful German-style houses where the rooms are filled knee-deep, sometimes waist-deep, with sand from the desert. The story of Kolmanskop begins in 1908. A railway worker named Zacharias Lawala was shoveling sand away from the tracks when he found a shiny stone. He showed it to his supervisor, a German railway inspector named August Stauch. Stauch, who was an amateur mineralogist, suspected it might be a diamond. He was right. In fact, the area was littered with them. You could literally walk around at night under the full moon and just pick diamonds up off the ground. Word got out, and a massive diamond rush began. Thousands of German miners flocked to this desolate spot in the desert, and within a few years, a lavish and wealthy town erupted from the sand. They built it in the style of a German village, with grand houses, a hospital that had the first X-ray machine in the southern hemisphere, a ballroom, a theater, a casino, and even an ice factory to make ice for their drinks. This was a pocket of extreme luxury in one of the harshest environments on Earth, all funded by diamonds. For about 40 years, Kolmanskop thrived. It was one of the richest towns in Africa. The residents lived a life of unbelievable opulence, hosting lavish parties and enjoying European culture in the middle of the desert. They even had a tram that connected them to a nearby port town. But their incredible wealth was tied to the diamonds, and the diamonds were a finite resource. By the 1930s, the diamond field was beginning to be exhausted. Larger, richer diamond deposits were discovered further south, and the miners, their families, and the businesses began to pack up and move. The decline was rapid. By 1956, Kolmanskop was completely abandoned. With no one to hold it back, the Namib Desert began to reclaim what it had lost. The wind blew sand into the houses, filling them up room by room. Today, it's a photographer's dream. A beautiful and haunting place where colorful, decaying buildings are being slowly swallowed by the endless dunes of the desert. Okay, this next ghost town is not ancient, and it's not in a remote desert or jungle. It's right here in California, and its story is honestly a modern-day tragedy. Welcome to Bombay Beach, on the shores of the Salton Sea. This place was once a glamorous resort town, a playground for Hollywood stars like Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys. Now it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a monument to an environmental disaster. The Salton Sea itself was created by accident in 1905 when the Colorado River flooded. In the 1950s and 60s, developers saw an opportunity. They marketed it as the Salton Riviera, a paradise for boating, water skiing, and fishing. Thousands of people bought lots and built homes, and resort towns like Bombay Beach popped up along the shore. For a while it was a booming success. It was a vibrant, sunny destination that actually attracted more tourists than Yosemite National Park. But there was a huge problem lurking beneath the surface. The Salton Sea has no outlet, meaning water only leaves through evaporation. Over the years, the agricultural runoff from nearby farms full of pesticides and fertilizers poured into the sea. As the water evaporated, the salt and chemical concentrations became higher and higher. The sea became saltier than the Pacific Ocean and incredibly toxic. This led to a series of ecological catastrophes. Massive fish die-offs occurred where millions of fish would die at once and wash ashore, creating a horrific stench that could be smelled for miles. Then, bird populations that fed on the fish also began to die off. The paradise was turning into a toxic nightmare. The tourists stopped coming, the businesses closed down, and the residents who could afford to leave fled. Bombay Beach was left to rot. Today, Bombay Beach is one of the strangest and most desolate places in America. The shoreline is not sand but a crust of crushed fish bones. The water is a murky, smelly soup. The abandoned houses and trailers are decaying, covered in graffiti and rust. But you know, something amazing has happened. In recent years, artists and squatters have moved in, turning the ruins into a bizarre open-air art gallery. They've created incredible sculptures and art installations from the debris, making Bombay Beach a symbol of decay, but also of strange apocalyptic beauty and resilience. This next location is probably the most famous and honestly the most chilling ghost city in the world. This is Pripyat, in Ukraine. It wasn't abandoned because of gold or diamonds, or because the economy collapsed. It was abandoned in a matter of hours because of the worst nuclear disaster in human history. This city is frozen in the year 1986, a perfect time capsule of the Soviet Union at the moment of its greatest failure. Pripyat was built in 1970 to house the workers and scientists of the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It was a model Soviet city, young and prosperous. The average age of its nearly 50,000 residents was only 26. They had the best of everything. New apartment blocks, good schools, a palace of culture, a large hospital, and an amusement park that was set to open for the May Day celebrations. Life was good, and the city had a bright future. That future ended at 1:23 a.m. on April 26, 1986. A catastrophic explosion in Reactor 4 of the power plant released a massive cloud of radioactive material into the atmosphere. For the first day, the residents of Pripyat knew nothing. They saw the fire, some even went to a nearby bridge to watch, unknowingly exposing themselves to lethal doses of radiation. The Soviet government tried to cover it up, but the radiation levels were too high to ignore. The next day, on April 27th, the announcement came. The city was to be evacuated. Buses lined up, and the residents were told they would be leaving for just 3 days. They were instructed to pack only essential documents and a small amount of food, and to leave everything else behind. They left their homes with the tables set for dinner, with toys scattered on the floor, with laundry hanging on the line. They never returned. In just 3 hours, the entire city was empty. Today, Pripyat is the heart of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. It is a haunting, silent world. Nature has taken over, with trees growing in the middle of roads and wildlife roaming the empty streets. The most iconic symbols are the decaying amusement park, with its famous Ferris wheel that never once carried a passenger, and the empty swimming pool. Walking through Pripyat is an incredibly moving and honestly terrifying experience. It's not just a ghost town, it's a grave, a stark, silent warning to humanity about the terrifying power we've unleashed. For our final location, we're going to a place that was once known as the French Riviera of the Mediterranean, a glamorous, bustling resort town that became a ghost city overnight, and has been fenced off from the world for almost 50 years. This is Varosha, a suburb of the city of Famagusta in Cyprus. This isn't just an abandoned city, it's a military-occupied no-man's land frozen in the summer of 1974. In the early 1970s, Varosha was one of the most popular and luxurious tourist destinations in the world. Its beautiful sandy beaches were lined with brand-new high-rise hotels and apartment buildings. The streets were filled with fancy restaurants, nightclubs, and designer boutiques. It was a playground for the rich and famous. Celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor and Brigitte Bardot were frequent visitors. It was a booming, modern paradise. Everything changed in July 1974. Following a Greek-led military coup, Turkey invaded Cyprus, occupying the northern third of the island. As the Turkish tanks advanced towards Famagusta, the entire population of Varosha, nearly 40,000 Greek Cypriot residents and thousands of tourists fled for their lives, expecting to return in a few days once the fighting stopped. They left with only the clothes on their backs, leaving behind all their possessions, but they were never allowed to return. The Turkish military fenced off the entire district of Varosha, and it has remained sealed ever since. It became a pawn in the ongoing political dispute over the divided island. For decades, it has been a ghost city, patrolled by Turkish soldiers with orders to shoot on sight. Through the rusty barbed wire fence, you could see a city perfectly preserved from 1974. Car dealerships were still filled with brand new 74 model cars, and window displays were still dressed with the fashions of the time. Just recently, in 2020, the Turkish authorities controversially decided to open up a small section of the Varosha beachfront to the public. For the first time in 46 years, people could walk on its sand and see the decaying high-rise hotels up close. But the vast majority of the city remains a forbidden zone. Varosha is a tragic and eerie sight, a once vibrant city held hostage by conflict, its glamorous past slowly crumbling away behind a wall of barbed wire and time. And that's a wrap on our tour of the world's most unbelievable abandoned cities. From billion-dollar mistakes and Arctic Soviet utopias to diamond towns swallowed by the desert and resorts frozen in time by war, these places are a testament to how quickly our world can change. They're creepy, they're beautiful, and they all have an incredible story to tell. It's crazy to think about the lives that were lived and the dreams that were shattered in these now silent streets. Each one of these places is a unique window into the past, a reminder of ambition, disaster, conflict, and the unstoppable power of nature. It makes you wonder what our own cities might look like in 50 or 100 years. Which of these places fascinated you the most? The green-covered village of Hutawan, the toxic resort of Bombay Beach, or the radioactive streets of Pripyat? I want to know. Let me know in the comments down below which one of these ghost towns you would be brave enough to explore, and if you know of any other insane abandoned places we should check out, tell me about them. If you enjoyed this crazy adventure, do me a huge favor and smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.